Hi class, in this video I am going to go over the instructions for the annotated bibliography. I am also going to briefly address some of the content in the annotated bibliography module. The first thing that you want to know about annotated bibliographies is that they focus on sources that you are planning on using for your essay. So annotated bibliographies actually kind of get a bad reputation. A lot of people find them very, very scary. And I don't think that there is anything particularly challenging about them. The only thing is that it requires you to look up sources, summarize them, and evaluate them, and cite them. So I think that's the part that people don't like doing, that they have to do research. Maybe that's the part that seems a little bit more daunting. But the actual creation and completion of an annotated bibliography is not that complicated. So basically the purpose of an annotated bibliography is to demonstrate that you have done valid research and thought critically about the sources you will be using in your classic argument essay. So these sources should be sources you're considering for your classic argument essay. And also keep in mind that the purpose of an annotated bibliography is to show that you have read and understand your sources, but another purpose is also to evaluate them. So basically, this is your chance to evaluate these sources and think about whether you really want to use them or not. Do they fit with your essay? Do they support your point? If they don't, then obviously you don't have to use them in your essay. So in your annotated bibliography, it's okay if you have a source that you say after evaluating this source, I'm not going to use it in my essay. It's perfectly okay to say that, because that's the whole purpose of this, to read them, summarize them, evaluate them, and then to really think about, do I still want to use them in my essay? So like I mentioned, the rigorous part, the part that's going to take you the most time, is probably doing the research and reviewing the sources. Once you've done that, the actual formatting of the annotated bibliography is pretty simple. All you need to do is you need to have 3 sources. So basically you're going to have 3 separate entries. Now for your essay, you actually need 4 sources, but for the annotated bibliography, you just need 3, because typically, like I said, the annotated bibliography is to determine what sources you want to use in your essay. So the annotated bibliographies are typically due before the essay. However, in this case, in some cases, they might be due the same week or before. So after you've done your research and you've looked through your sources, you just have to follow these steps. The first one is you have to cite the source in APA. After you've done that, you are ready for the annotation. So basically, the annotated bibliography consists of an APA citation and then a paragraph that we call the annotation. So in this paragraph, you should summarize the source, basically tell us what the source is about and what is the argument that the author is making. After you've done that, you want to evaluate the source critically. Tell us if there are biases, inconsistencies, fallacies, lack of evidence. Is it heavily opinion-based? Do they not provide credible evidence? You know, things like that. Is the source objective, right? Because you don't want to use sources that are biased. You don't want to use sources that have very questionable evidence, because then that's going to affect the ethos of your essay. So after you've evaluated the source and summarized the source, you want to go ahead and answer this question. Will you use this source in your essay? Why or why not? So like I said, it's perfectly okay to mention you're not going to use the source because it lacked evidence or because the evidence does not fit with your argument. That's perfectly acceptable. That's the whole point of the annotated bibliography, to evaluate the sources. So as you can see, that's all you have to do: an APA citation and a small paragraph that answers these 3 bullet points. Now obviously you want to format this as a paragraph, not as bullet points. So let me go ahead and show you an example so you can see what it looks like. So here we have an example, and here is a citation. This is a journal, the Hemingway Review, and it is cited in APA. And then over here, we have the paragraph that answers these 3 points that are part of the annotation. So this paragraph right here summarizes the source, which is right here, this part. And then that's the summary. And then over here, we have the evaluation. And as you can see right here, it even offers a possible limitation. So here's the evaluation of the source. And then at the very end, I say I will also use this source to show that Catherine takes on the more masculine role because she wants to emulate David since she is jealous of his artistic abilities. By the way, I say I because I actually wrote this. This is an example from an annotated bibliography that I wrote back when I was in college. So I took one entry and I used it as an example. So as you can see, the paragraph does not have to be very long. It can be, you know, a few sentences long as you cover all of this. Now, obviously, you don't want to make it just 3 sentences, right? Because you are dealing with academic sources. So your academic sources should have more substantial information than just 1 sentence. So when you're summarizing the source, it should be maybe like 2 to 3 sentences. And then your evaluation of the source can again be like 2 to 3 sentences. And then this one can just be 1 sentence. So as you can see, that's why I say 4 to 5 sentences would be the minimum that you should write for the annotation. However, you don't want to write a very, very long annotation either. Usually PhD candidates or people who are getting their PhD, those are the ones that, you know, their annotations are really long. Like I've seen some that are over a page and a half for each annotation. You're not doing that. Here we want 4 to 5 sentences minimum. So as you can see, it is not that complicated. Like I said, probably the most complicated part is doing the research. However, you do want to make sure that you cite everything in APA. I also do want to mention that sometimes when people submit annotated bibliographies, they just copy and paste all this and they put that in their reference page at the end of their essay. You don't want to do that because that's not a reference page. At the end of your essay, you should have a reference page that is cited in APA. According to APA, you should include the sources you used in your essay. So the APA reference page should include the sources you cited in the text. Those sources should be in the reference page and vice versa. So basically in the reference page, you are not putting sources you consulted. You're only putting sources that you actually used within the essay. That's why you can't just copy and paste this because the annotated bibliography might contain sources that you don't actually use in your essay. And even if you do use all these 3 sources in your essay, you shouldn't just copy and paste the whole thing because the reference page does not have annotations. So if you are going to copy and paste anything, just copy and paste the citation and then put it in the order that it should be in the reference page. That you can do, but I don't really encourage, nor do I want anybody to just copy the whole thing because I've seen that. And again, your annotated bibliography should not be the reference page because it's not a reference page. So just make sure that you do that properly because you don't want to end up getting points deducted because you submitted your annotated bibliography instead of a reference page with your essay. So keep that in mind that the annotated bibliography is a separate assignment that you submit separately. Once you submit your essay, the last page of your essay should be a reference, not just a copied version of your annotated bibliography. So once we go back to the annotated bibliography module, of course we have this assignment right here, but we also have an annotated bibliography sample so that you can see what an actual annotated bibliography looks like. And as you can see, here we have the citation, and then here we have the annotation. It's okay if you break it up into paragraphs. Like here they have 2 paragraphs, but you don't have to do that. This could just be 1 paragraph. And then here you see the second citation. So this is what you're doing. Your annotated bibliography should have 3 sources, so you're going to have 3 entries. Keep in mind that it should still follow APA format, so you should still go ahead and organize the sources in alphabetical order by the author's last name, because that's according to APA. Here we also have a video that talks about how to annotate an annotated bibliography. So here you can see that the video tells you how to format it and how to set it up. So I think this video is really helpful if you've never done an annotated bibliography, or if you're not that familiar with APA. I definitely recommend that you watch this video so that you can understand how to format your annotated bibliography. And once we go back to the module, if you click on next, it'll take you to the OWL at Purdue page that discusses annotated bibliographies. So here they kind of give you a definition of what annotation is, summarize, assess, reflect, things like that. And it tells you about the purpose of the annotations. And of course, the OWL at Purdue is something that you want to follow because it has an APA guide, so it'll help you cite sources in APA style. And I apologize for all these pop-ups, but it really seems like nowadays you can't visit a website without a bunch of advertisement. But in any case, I definitely encourage you to go ahead and look at the module for the annotated bibliography, because it has more information like samples and things like that, and like the video. So please let me know if you have any questions over your annotated bibliography. Like I said, it should be about sources that are related to your classical argument. So you don't want to just pick any 3 random sources. It should be sources that are potentially going to be used for your classical argument. And make sure that you also look at the instructions for the classical argument, because for this essay you need 4 sources, and you also need to make sure that only one is a website. So what I mean by that is only one of these 4 sources can be a website. So you can use online newspapers, you can use online magazines, online articles, online documents, but only one of them can be a website. And a website is something like dacc.nmsu.edu. You know, that's a website. But if you use an article from the New York Times, that doesn't count as a website. That counts as an online periodical or an online article. So just make sure that you don't just go to Google and pick the sources the first 4 sources that pop up. The point of this assignment is to do some serious research, credible research for academic sources, and you want to make sure that you pick a variety of sources as well. So I definitely encourage you to visit the library databases before you do a Google search. That way you're not just relying on websites. So please let me know if you have any questions.